Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We're going to be doing the Ryzen 3 3200G build today. This is going to be a budget streaming build. We're going to be under $500 here with the parts you see listed below, and this is before, some of the price increases and whatnot. These parts here came from big box stores and Micro Center, and all the prices and the links will be listed below. So what we're going to do is we've been running the old FX 6300 for a while now here, and I was using the GTX 1660 Super as a test bed in the FX 6300, and believe it or not, for streaming 720 and 1080p with no other processes running and just OBS, this thing ran perfectly fine. All the encoding was done on the 1660 Super, so you didn't really need a fast processor. There's been other reviews online showing just using the NVENC encoder and how good that encoder is. You don't need a fast processor. But since this computer is aging, it's aged very well. I've had this computer over 6 years now and have no complaints, constantly upgrading it as all of us get those niches to do. So what we have here is, we'll first start out with the processor. It's a 3200G, 4-core, 4-thread processor, 3.6 with a 4 gigahertz boost. We're going to run this guy on a budget A320 MATX board. You've previously seen this one in my 2600X build, and then we upgraded that board to an X570. So this is going to pair very well if I want to use the onboard inputs and outputs for video. I can use that because this does have integrated graphics. However, we're not going to use that. We're going to use the 1660 Super, and we've got a 500 gig NVMe PCIe 3 card here. We'll run that. So we got some fast speeds, and then we're using some DDR4 3200 megahertz. This is 16 gigs, double 8 gig chips here, so we're gonna run in dual channel. I did have this open because I ran it in, I tested the memory before we're gonna do this build. Additionally, I wanna show you this old guy. He's been in a previous video before. This is a very low cost. This is an AM1. So this is an Athlon 5350. So it's an AM1 processor. I just love this little thing. It's running a cheap 400 watt power supply, but this is a 25 watt TDP chip. And we're going to do an update video for this because I have not shown anybody this computer in years. And right now it was running Ubuntu. We're reloading Windows on it because this is going to go in my office upstairs. And we're putting Windows 10 back on it. We're going to put the R7 out of this, which is a 2 gig card, in here. So we have a dedicated graphics card. It does have onboard graphics, but we're not going to use the Radeon graphics. We're going to put our AMD card in here. But I had a lot of thought how we're going to do this new computer setup, whether I was going to use this upstairs or not use this and scavenge some parts off of it, like the PSU, and throw it into our old Dell case or an old HP case and make it more of like an office looking computer. But then I've been thinking about this guy. I'm like, well, I've had this for years. The board still works well. The setup is it was perfectly fine on it. It's good for low-end games, playing games on 720p, great for the kids to play it. But going back to making this a streaming PC, I've got a lot of space down here for 3.5 inch hard drives. There's space on the back for multiple SSDs. This has NVMe slot, so I at least have my main SSD on there. Plus I have another There's a M.2 SSD, not an NVMe SSD, but we do have another SSD on this board. And I was like, well, why don't I just build this in another case? After long, hard thoughts, we're going to retire this board and this processor. We're going to put her back in the box. Maybe another rainy day we might revive her, but she's going to go away. But we're going to reuse the case. Got a good power supply in here, kind of overkill for this. It's a Corsair CX750 modular power supply. I've got a couple 1 terabyte hard drives in here. So with this being a streaming PC, we're gonna have plenty of room to store all the captured footage and leave it in this case. It's good. We're gonna have plenty of room for it. So after hard thoughts, you know, not losing sleep over it, but after a really hard thought, we're going to use this case for all this stuff. But before we do that, I'm going to take a second and I'm going to plug this back in. I'm going to make sure I clear out the good data that I need over to my 4 terabyte external. After I clean everything up, we're going to come back and we're going to look at what this case looks like right now. So we're going to do some before, some afters, because I haven't done anything rather than just take this. This isn't glass, it's acrylic. It's the plastic one. We're going to take that off. We're going to show you the inside. Then on the opposite side here, this has been around for a while. You can see it's traveled all the way across the country with me. We're going to take this side panel off because lots of dust. I really don't remember what the back of this looks like. I don't remember the cable management. I know that I put extra fans in the top here. It only came with one on the back. I put extra fans here, put extra fans in the front, and I know I had to put some kind of fan controller because I didn't use all the fan headers on here. So we're going to do that. Take a look at this guy, unbox this stuff, get her up and running. She's almost there. Get that up and running, and then we're going to go from there. So why use the 1660 Super? Well, for the Turing graphics, the Turing architecture, and the NVENC encoder. I've been using this guy, this monstrosity, which is a AMD XFX RX 5600 XT. And this is a huge card. This is, I've did my unboxing of it. It's a 2.9 slot design, so almost a 3 slot design. And it's a really big card. The encoding on it, as we all know, isn't as good as the Nvidia encoding. AMD has done a great job with this card. It can push everything over 140 frames on 1080. I really like the card, but I wanted to try using the NVENC encoder. So she's still in this computer here and doing very well. I'm running around 100 FPS with streaming on this using OBS or OBS Studios. Both of them do very similar. It's doing very well. But she, as you can see, is a 1 fan card. She's really tiny, but I want to test it before I put it in this build. And I'll be using that card in the FX 6300 as the encoding card while this was in the main computer. Budget card, 220 bucks. And it does very well. I mean, if this was your only card in your computer, and I really think that this setup right here, this combination would be great for anybody if you just need a single PC to play some games on, to stream, or even if you added a capture card and you want to stream your console games on it. This right here would be perfect. And we're going to see some of the gameplay footage, or even some comparisons on if we're able to, we're going to get some examples of what the benchmarks would be on this setup. So what we're going to do is we're going to unbox this, take our RAM, our processor, and our NVMe drive, and we're going to build the motherboard. We previously used this, so this may not look like yours if you were to open this A320 S2H4 up. You got your documentation here. We've got some screws and stuff. It was already previously used, and here's the back plate for the board, because to install these coolers, you have to take off these little adapters for a different type of cooling option. Let's take this out of the box here. I know there's some loose screws and stuff because we just put this back in the box just a few weeks ago. So here's our board. Your AM4 slot, there's 2 DIMM slots for a RAM, your NVMe slot, and it's a very basic board. You got 4 SATA 3 connectors on here. You've got your PCIe 3 16X and 2 PCIe 1s. You've got some audio, USBs, 1 USB 3, just a very basic board. There's your 24-pin connector, a single 8-pin for the processor, and there's only 1 fan header here. There's another system fan, so that's your CPU fan, and your system fan right here. Other than that, the board is very, very basic. We'll take our RAM, and there's a little notch right here. I'm going to line those up, make sure both of these clips are out. So when you grab it, you can take it and you can push it right down. You might have to use a little bit of force, but they clip in. Grab the other chip. Plain and simple. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to install our NVMe drive. Remove your screw. If the screw is not in here, or the standoff is in a different location, this is a 80 size, so it's an 80 millimeter size. So you've got your 42, your 60, and your 80. Most of them are 80s. 110s are really big, and it's amazing. This had a 110, but we're going to use the 80 for this. So took off your little screw. Here's your NVMe drive, your M.2 drive, excuse me. We're going to slide her in. She's going to sit up like this. She'll be a little bouncy, and you'll feel it click in. And we're going to just slide that right down there. Install our screw, gently pushing down as we install that screw. We've all seen this before, but just to show you how to screw this in, I know when I did my 250 gigabyte drive on the regular M.2 SSD, which is in there, it's a Western Digital Blue, a couple people are like, wow, how'd it go in? You know, what'd you do? Same thing I just did there. Remove the screw, push the drive in, gently push down. There is some pins here, so there's a little elasticity to it, little springy motion. After you push it in, you'll feel it hit the end, and you just slide it right down. Gently applying pressure, and put your screw in. There are some of these that come with heat sinks that sit a little higher, or the boards have a heat sink on them, and there is no screw. The screw may be out here while the heat sink actually pushes on the drive to lay it flat. But there's our M.2 SSD installed. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take our back plate here, and it only goes in one way because of the whole design. We're going to put this behind the motherboard so that they pop out here, and then we're going to grab our screws. No, we don't need screws. So then we can take our processor, put our processor on, and then install our tool. So here's our Ryzen 3 3200G. We're going to pull this lever up. We're going to take out the processor, and we're going to gently drop her in. There is a little gold indicator here, which lines up with the indicator on the board. She gently drops in, and then we're just going to push this down. So she's in. Take this out of the way. Open up our cooling unit. This cooler is much thinner than what comes on the 3400G or the larger Ryzen 5 cooler, so a little bit more narrow. And there's already thermal paste applied. Nothing you have to do here, rather than let's line this up where you want it, whether you want the AMD facing the RAM or you want the AMD facing the VRM side. It's completely up to you. It's just personal preference. So we're going to lay this down on here, and we're going to gently apply some pressure. So all screw holes have lined up. And these are spring loaded. So we're going to go in a cross fashion here. You start hearing them cranking down. And at the bottom, they won't turn anymore. So there's no way to over tighten these. So there you go. She's installed there. And next thing we're going to do, since there's so limited space on here, there's only one fan header. This is for the CPU fan, is right here at the top. So some people like to try to wrap this cord a certain way. There's really nowhere you can do it on this board. So we're just going to plug this right in at the top here, and that's it. And you can take this and slide it right on the side. So there we go. So essentially we are fully up and operational now. We have a hard drive. We can use integrated graphics on the board. We've got our RAM installed. So this PC is almost built. Here she is. Here's the chassis of the old FX 6300 build, and we're going to take off the front acrylic side, and we're going to take off the back panel to see what's inside. Before, this is an acrylic side. It's not plastic, which is really nice. You don't have to worry about it shattering or breaking. In the case, you got the 970A Pro Gaming Carbon board by MSI. We've got our wireless card, our R7370, this nice power supply, and then you've got 2 or 3 bays down here for your larger, yeah, I got 3 different bays here. On the back side is where we have our SSD. Of truth, I have not taken this case off, and the back of this case off in forever. Ah, there it goes. Wow. This is before I really got into really putting these guys together, but let's see what we have back here. It's been a while. So I got 240 gig solid state drive. We just backed this guy up. This was empty. This is an old Vertex 3. This is my first SSD I ever bought. I bought this for my old i3 2100 build whenever that came out years ago. And this guy here cost me $130 for a 90 gig. Still running good. Lots of dust back here. So we're gonna, wow, okay, so there's my fans. Lots of cables back here. That's for the 24 pin. That's for one SSD. This is a semi-modular power supply. I've got cables out in another box, but this is for all my fans. Now again, this board only has one fan header. So we're gonna have to repurpose this, this splitter so we can have multiple fans running. Now we don't need that for this because this isn't gonna be a hot build. However, with the red LEDs in the case, we're gonna keep using this, but we are definitely going to make this look a lot prettier. And again, this is a Corsair Carbide Spec 05 case. They've had some upgrades to it since then. Some of the metal is now mesh. But I really love this case because it looks beefy, but it's got plenty of room in the back here for cable management, as you can see. And we're gonna start cleaning this. I'm gonna start taking off all of my external accessories, like these Wi-Fi antennas. You know, I said this board, or excuse me, this case, Corsair Carbide Spec 05 case, had a lot of cable management capabilities, and it does. You can really tie some of the stuff back in here. But oh my gosh, I mean, I have 6 different SATA cables connected. I've got stuff everywhere, and yeah, this has lasted me a good long time. There you can see the old 250 gig M.2 SSD. Now this is a SATA SSD. This is not a NVMe drive. I did look up that this motherboard would support NVMe, but for some reason when I bought this, it was years ago, and it was not an NVMe. So here's this rat's nest that has been slowly digging away at me for the last couple hours. So we've got the front cleared out. I had to take out this old OCZ SSD. It's a 90 gig, I believe. I think that's what it is. Yeah, 90 gig, just SATA 3 SSD. So I took that guy out. I actually found the bracket for it. This is the bracket it came with years ago. So 2.5 to 3.5 inch drive bracket. So I left the PNY 240 up top, and then on the bottom here, we're gonna throw a bunch of hard drives in there. I believe this is a 500 gig. I've got 2 more. I got another 500 and a 1 terabyte I'm gonna throw down here, just so we have, you know, kind of like a server, a bunch of storage options in here. Again, this board will only allow so much, so I've got to look at the, it's only got 4 SATA headers on it, and none of those are taken away by the M.2 NVMe, so that's good. So we still have 4 of them on there to use. So we're going to take these standoffs, and we're going to take the board, line up the board to the standoffs, move the standoffs, and install the board. And I'll remove this old back plate here, and we're going to install the new back plate first. All right, guys. Okay, everyone, we got the board in. We just had to adjust a couple standoffs on the bottom. I did have the 8-pin connector for the power, for the CPU power was coming up on the back here, but it would not fit. So I still ran the fan through that small hole in the back. The power for this CPU is actually going to probably come off of here or the side. I'm going to wrap it on the top. We do have 2 fans we may be still installing on the top there. I don't know yet. So there's the motherboard. So standoffs are good. We installed all of our screws. Motherboard is in place. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at some cable management on the back. I know we ran this fan up and over through that small hole. We're going to get the power cable for the CPU and the 24-pin connector connected, as well as the front I/O here. We're going to get those connected out of the way and tie those up, because that's really the next main thing you would want to do here. Alright guys, so we've got a lot of stuff in here already. We moved the video card over, we've got our NVMe drive. Nothing else has really changed here. I did add the wireless card back in, and you can see that there's only 3 real slots on this motherboard. So even though this is a 2X card, there was 3 slots on the board, 1 16X and 2 1X slots. You can see that I really don't have any much more room. It's only MATX board, so My last 1X slot, I did put the wireless card because it does have Bluetooth in it as well. The cable coming off of it is for the USB Bluetooth, and the Wi-Fi runs off the 1X. So I'll link that in the description below. That's a Fenvi generic dual band wireless card. So that's what she looks like right now. When I get this backboard on there, the other side of the case, it's going to be much more clean. So we're going to wrap this movie up here. Just did a test stream. It came out pretty good. Have to tweak a few settings, but overall, this system here was built as a main streaming rig. Use the capture card, which is an Elgato HD60S Plus. So it's a 4K pass-through card, so I can play 4K on this 4K TV, Xbox. Not gonna really be playing any PC games in 4K. We just don't have that capability. Our graphics cards aren't strong enough for it. Overall, it was a good build. It was easy. Hardest part for me was probably cleaning out the rest of the stuff that was in that case. The acrylic side really reflects a lot. But we turned all the fans on. The fans are powered via SATA power connectors. It's not using any of the onboard headers. And I'm really happy with the way it came out. This capture card's great. It uses USB 3. So the way I have this set up is this computer is running a HDMI out into the capture card. OBS is showing this as a projected view. So it's not like I'm pushing a secondary source over to that computer. Audio and video is going over HDMI to the capture card, which is then going in via USB 3 into Streamlabs OBS. Swap out the HDMI cables right here and go right over into to Xbox. So if I want to change the sources, I've got two HDMI cables right there. I can just flip them over. Lastly, would I do it over again? Probably. It's low overkill for what I wanted to do. I could have just kept with the FX 6300. But now I've got a secondary computer. It's hooked up. This is my only monitor right now, which is my TV. I have the TV set at 1080, not 4K, so that it's not overpowering that video card, that 1660Super. Probably make this my LAN rig that I can take with me. Won't want to take this thing anywhere, but that one I can carry with me. I take it to a friend's house. Has all my streaming stuff on it if I want to stream, or if I just wanted to use it as a cheaper LAN rig, that's what I can do. So leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. Any suggestions. Again, this was a very budget 3200G Ryzen 3 build with an A320 board, 16 gigs of RAM, and a 1660 Super single fan, so it's a smaller card. But thanks for watching this, guys. Really appreciate it, and I'll see you out there on Twitch.